Good afternoon, sir. Can you see and hear us?
Yes, thank you very much.
May we please call Mr. Barnes?
I swear by Almighty God
I swear by Almighty God
that the evidence I shall give
that the evidence I shall give
shall be the truth,
shall be the truth,
the whole truth,
the whole truth,
and nothing but the
and
truth.
nothing but the truth. Thank you.
Could you confirm your full name, please, Mr. Barnes?
Gerald James Barnes.
Thank you for coming to the inquiry to assist it in its work. As you know, I will be asking you questions on behalf of the inquiry. You should have in front of you hard copies of 2 witness statements in your name in a bundle. The first is at tab A of that bundle and is dated the 30th of August 2023. If you could turn, please, to page 23 of that, please.
Right, yes, yes.
Do you have a copy with a visible signature?
Yes, I do, yes.
And is that your signature?
It is my signature, yes.
The second statement is at tab A2 of that bundle and is dated the 19th of December 2023. If you could turn to page 13 of that statement, please.
Right, yes.
Is there also a visible signature on that copy?
There is, yes.
Is that your signature?
It is my signature, yes.
Are the contents of your statements true to the best of your knowledge and belief?
Yes, that they are, yes.
For the purposes of the transcript, the references for Mr. Barnes' first statement is WITN 098-70100, and the reference for the second statement is WITN 098-70200. Mr. Barnes, I will not be asking you about every aspect of the statements that you have provided, which will be provided on and published on the inquiry website in due course. I will instead be asking about certain specific issues which are addressed in them. Starting, please, with the relevant roles you have held with Fujitsu Services Limited over the years you have spent in its employment. In broad terms, you have been a software developer with Fujitsu since 1998, is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
And you remain employed by Fujitsu?
That is correct, yes.
You explain in your first statement that your first job with Fujitsu involved looking after a database of reports produced by post office clerks, is that right?
That's right, yes.
And you then became involved in supporting the electronic point of sale service, or EPOS, software for transacting at the counter and balancing, as well as looking after related reports.
That's correct, yes.
Can you recall the year in which you became involved in supporting EPOS software?
Not exactly, no. But pretty soon, I think. I got to grips with the reports and got that all under control, and the designer in the team thought, probably about time to give me some more work to do too, because I kept doing the reports, I kept that all under control, but I had sort of automated it and got it more moderately streamlined, so I had time to do other work, and I think that's when I started looking at other things.
So was it within the first year that you joined Fujitsu, if you joined in 1998?
That's pretty moderately soon, I would say. I just can't remember exact dates.
And whilst you were in this role, you did an evening class in bookkeeping, is that right?
Yes, that's when I started looking at this balancing, and I found that very, very interesting. So yes, in my own time, I got some accounting qualifications just because I just found it so interesting. That's why.
You give some examples of software which you developed at paragraph 6 of your first statement. Could we have that on screen, please? It is page 2 of WITN 098-70100. at paragraph 6, you say, I remember writing a component called Operation Launch.
Yes, I mean, there's quite a few things I did, but that was certainly one of them. That was when we were starting looking at sales with debit cards and credit cards. Yes, that was a part of that project.
And you say it was to facilitate the use of those credit and debit
That's
cards.
right, yes.
Which were that was being introduced in the earlier version of the Horizon system, Legacy Horizon.
That's right, yes, that's correct, yes.
And you go on to give another example of software you wrote at paragraph 6, and you say this, I also remember writing the migration software that enabled a counter to transition from using Isha's Riposte software platform to the new system known as HNGX or Horizon Online. Because of this piece of work, I believe I was the last member of the EPOS Riposte team, which was a large team during the time of Legacy Horizon. Just pausing there, you say it was a large team. Can you remember how large your team was?
Not precisely, but 10 or 20 maybe. I could give you an exact figure.
You deal at paragraph 7 of your statement with the circumstances in which you moved to the audit team. And you say this, in 2009 or thereabouts, whilst supporting the migration software for the remaining counters to transition to HNGX, I also started looking at the audit system in HNGX, which was a completely new area for me. It was around this time that I joined the audit team. I recall that there was already an audit system in Legacy Horizon for Riposte that I knew little about then. When I joined the team, this audit system was being rewritten as part of the transition to HNGX. For this reason, I have limited experience and knowledge regarding the systems and processes relating to audit and ARQs in relation to Legacy Horizon. It's right, isn't it, that the audit team was and remains responsible for providing to the Post Office, when requested to do so, audit data retrieved from the audit servers for the purposes of Post Office investigation of and criminal, civil or disciplinary action against sub-postmasters, their assistants and managers, and those employed by the Post Office. Is that right?
That's partly true, but they have queries for very many other reasons why you want to look at historic data, but certainly that's one of the reasons, yes.
And you have remained in the audit team since you joined in around 2009, is that right?
That's right. I've done a few other things as well when things have been slack, but I've always been responsible for the audit software and still am, in fact.
Turning, please, to the point at which you began supporting the EPOS software. When you took up this role, were you aware that an EPOS task force had been established in August 1998 to address the escalating number of pinnacles being raised, which led the task force reporting significant deficiencies in the EPOS product, its code, and its design?
No, in fact, I'm not aware of that. I certainly wasn't aware of that then, and not even sure I'm aware of it until you just told me.
Do you recall the rollout of Legacy Horizon?
Not the rollout, I don't think, because it would have already started rolling out before I joined, but there were numerous further releases, improved releases all the time.
Do you recall ever being made aware of an acceptance incident in around July 1999, which related to accounts not balancing sufficiently or at all?
I'm aware of quite a few non-balancing issues. Can you be more specific in giving me a pointer to this particular one? Is there a page reference or?
So at this stage, I'm referring to an acceptance incident
Right.
in the course of the negotiation of the rollout of Legacy Horizon. Do you remember being told about an acceptance incident that related to balancing?
Not specifically. I might have been, but I can't be specific.
You have fairly recently been provided by the inquiry with a number of documents relating to your involvement in reported issues with Legacy Horizon. I'd like to ask you, please, about a number of those documents. Could we have on screen, please, document reference POL 000-28747? This is a peak incident management system log. The call reference is at the top left of the document, PC 0059497. And at the top right, we see you identified as the call logger. At the risk of stating the obvious, does that mean that you logged the call to which this log relates?
I think it means I cloned the call. Well, yes, I did, but it's a call type clone call. I assume, although I can't remember for sure, that there must have been an existing peak which I then cloned for some reason, and that's why I became the call logger.
Can you help, please, with what a cloned call is?
Oh, it's just when you have peaks, and for some reason or other, you might want to have a copy so that one is used for one purpose in resolving issues and another copy is used for another issue in resolving issues. And so you clone it, so you've got two of them, and then one might take one path and the other might take another path. For example, if you've got two releases going on and you want an urgent fix to go out to live in the first, but you've got to catch it up in software being developed for the follow-on release, then you'd need two, one for the live and one for the follow-on release. That's just one example. I mean, there are others.
The first entry on the log shows the call was made on the 20th of November 2000 at 13:19, and the entry at 13:20 says this: receipts versus payments difference at 154004 for CAP 34. This is not a migration issue. This outlet has no other open calls on PowerHelp. Please investigate and confirm if this is a CI3 or CI4 office. If this is a CI4 office, this may be a new problem. Was this your entry? Or not?
No, that's customer call. That wouldn't have been something I added. That would be that would be someone else's entry. My entries would always have my name, where it's got user underbar, customer call underbar. My entries would always be user Gerald Barnes.
Going over the page, please. Towards the bottom of the page, there is an entry dated the 8th of December 2000, timed at 12:33. If we could zoom in a little on that, please. And here is an example of just that, user Gerald Barnes. So is this an entry made by you?
Yes, this would definitely be yes.
And this says, new evidence added, messages produced when stock unit 008 was rolled, a F response. Can you help with 008?
Oh, well, that's just the name of the stock unit. So all the stock units are given different names, and that's just one of the names. So, I mean, it could be anything really. It's just the name of the stock unit. So, I mean, in an office, if it's a very small office, you might only have one stock unit, but you could have more than one or many. In a very big office, you have many stock units.
And you say here, this is another case of transactions being dropped. At CI3_2R, this happens with no error logged. At CI4L1 and above, it is often the case that an error will be reported to the user, and in such cases. Can you help with what you were referring to by CI3_2R?
Right, these are just the names of the releases. So, I can't remember in detail, but in general, each release rolled out of the EPOS software would have some reference number, and although I can't remember that far back, these must have been the references to the various releases.
You go on, I will have another look at M1 rollover and see if any further improvements can be made in error trapping to catch other riposte errors. You refer in this entry to this being another case of transactions being dropped. Is it fair to say, therefore, that this was an issue which you knew was not an isolated one?
Well, we're going back in time a long way, but I didn't write all this cash account software myself originally, but I did spend a lot of time looking at the code and looking at peaks and trying to improve it. So it sounds like I could see another place where it could be improved. In this case, to try and make the error handling better than it was before.
But this issue of transactions being dropped, you're referring to that as being another case.
Yes.
So transactions being dropped, this isn't, it seems, an isolated case of that.
Yes, well, from what I wrote, it must be right. Yes, I can't specifically remember that far back, but I've written what I've written. So yes, it must be the case that I've spotted this before.
Is it right on the face of your entry here that this was a problem caused by a riposte error?
Oh, that's right. That's right. So the basic riposte errors should if they go wrong, they have their own error mechanism which you should be able to catch, and I think what I'm saying is that the errors weren't being caught properly. That's what I'm saying. So they could have failed and not be noticed. Though I've subsequently discovered, actually, you tend to get what's called an event written to the event log always. So one of these riposte calls failing, although it might not be caught in the software, typically it would go to the Windows event log, you get something, a red event there. So after the event, you would be able to spot these things by checking the Windows event log, but the software itself did not catch the errors. And in my view, that's much better if the software itself catches the errors and reports back. The ideal case, if it was really written perfectly from the word go, anything goes wrong when the postmaster rolls over the stock unit, you should have a message is logged somewhere in the event log, doesn't matter where, somewhere, and a clear message reported to the postmaster, this has gone wrong, please contact the help desk. That's how ideally it should all work, but at this time it wasn't like that.
And being specific, this error, where it occurred at CI13-2R, did not result in an error message coming up for the user. That's what you're suggesting.
That's what it says, so I suppose that's right. Yes, I mean, I can't really remember that far back in detail, but that's what I've written.
So if it happened and appeared as a misbalance to the user, is it right that it would require further investigation of the message store, or depending on the timings of the investigation, the audit data, to explore whether an error in Horizon was to blame?
That's right, yes, that's right.
What if the user did not report the issue and there was therefore no investigation?
If the user didn't report, well, I mean, then it goes unnoticed. But if there will be some sort of error if I suppose it's always possible. Nothing's noticed, I suppose. But yes, it won't unless the user reports something. Then we're not going to know about it, I would say.
You say in your entry that at CI 4L1 and above, it is often the case that an error will be reported to the user.
It looks like things were improved then, yes.
You say often, but not always.
Yes, that's right. That's right. I think that's probably right.
In the context of a balancing problem, a failure in error reporting is a significant problem, isn't it?
Definitely, I would say absolutely, yes. Yep, definitely.
Going over the page, please. There is another entry made by you dated the 11th of December, which is 3 entries down. If we can zoom in a little, please. And you appear to record that a fix was implemented. Was this a fix that was carried out by you, can you say?
Doesn't say explicitly there. It's the sort of thing I'd likely to be involved with, but I can't say for sure one way or it might have been another developer. It is not explicit, is it? I can't remember this event well enough to be able to be assertive on my response there, other than what's written. So, might have been me, might have been another developer.
2 entries down on the 18th of December. We can see an entry from Clifford Sordy. He notes that there is no specific test which can be performed to prove a fix for the original problem regarding missing transactions. And then there is an entry on the 17th of January 2001, which says this: we've run through complete M1 test cycles and subsequent stock unit rollover and cash account testing as described above by Cliff and have been unable to reproduce this error, suggest this is now closed. And then finally an entry on the 18th of January, starting at the bottom of the page, going over to the next, please. And it says closing call as fixed at future release date, PM has not been informed. Why would the postmaster not be informed about the outcome of the investigation?
I couldn't answer that question. That I was 4th line support. This would be some higher up level of support. I don't know the answer to that question.
There are no further entries on this log to evidence any further check to ensure the problem, which had not been reproduced by testing by this point, would not be an issue in future releases. We can't see any evidence of that, can we?
That's right. Well, I think, it's a long time ago, but my guess is that it was some sort of intermittent problem and therefore very difficult to test. You can't really, if it's some intermittent failure, you can't really, it's very difficult to, the best they could do is regression test everything. And if someone, which might have been me, has just simply improved the error handling in some area, all that means is that next time this intermittent problem comes up, you would have more evidence than before the improvement in error handling.
At the time, did you recognise the implications of an error in riposte or otherwise causing a discrepancy in the accounts of a branch without the user in branch being aware of that error?
I don't think I would have thought about it. These were just technical issues to me, which I did my very, very best to fix, but I don't think my mind would go in that direction, really.
Could we have on screen, please, document reference POL 000-28750? This is a peak which appears to relate to the same call on the 20th of November 2000, which was the subject of the last peak we've just looked at. But it has an extra entry from you, and we don't have the reference to a cloned call. So is this an example of another document that records the call that's used for a different...
I don't know for sure, but possibly this is the original call, and the call you showed me first of all is cloned from it. That's possible. I don't know for sure, though, without checking it carefully.
Could we look, please, to the bottom of page 2? We see there the same entry we've just looked at. We don't need to zoom in on that, but just to show you that it is the same entry there on the 8th of December. And then over the page, please. The top entry there, also the 8th of December. If we could just zoom in a little, please. We see at the very top of the page, call PC 0058161 cloned to new call PC 0059497, and then this entry from you here at 12:38. And as already stated, this is a case of riposte system calls failing with no error being logged. At CI4L1, things are much better. The call has been cloned to improve even further still the logging of riposte system call errors in stock unit rollover. You may not be able to help at this remove, but can you help with what you meant by at CI4L1 things are much better?
Well, I can't remember the details, but presumably I wrote that because I was aware that a lot of fixes were going into CI4L1, but my memory isn't that good. I can read what I wrote, but that's all I can imagine. It was the case that, in general, we've done more peak fixes for CI4L1, the development team in general, and no doubt I helped in that too. So we thought that things would be better in that release.
It does not sound from this entry as though CI4L1 was a complete fix, does it?
Oh, no. I mean, you could never get every single bug from a system. That's just, you do your best, but it's just impossible. There's always bound to be some bugs in systems.
Turning, please, to your knowledge of later issues with Legacy Horizon, could we have on screen, please, FUJ 000-90436? You refer in your statement at paragraph 6 to your involvement in Operation Launch, and we've looked at that reference, which you say related to facilitating the use of credit and debit cards in relation to Legacy Horizon. This appears to be a report relating to Operation Launch. The release referenced is BI3S70. We can see you're listed as the originator and department. Were you the author of this document?
Yes, I think so. That's when you say, yes, I think so, yes.
The document is dated, looking to the top right-hand corner, 12th of January 2005. And could we turn, please, to page 6 of this document? Under the heading Non-Functional Tests and the subheading Performance, we have this: pool-paged bytes for both desktop and riposte were monitored with Performance Monitor for 7212 cycles of the SOAP test, which meant over 14,000 operations were launched. No memory leakage was detected in the desktop at all. For riposte, the figures are given in the table below, and then you set out some figures. You say this is much more likely to be a problem with riposte than with Operation Launch, since Operation Launch shares its memory with the desktop. And then over the page, please. There is summary of problems found. The only possible problem found was that riposte may have a memory leak. It is considered beyond the scope of this module test to progress this further. Can you help, please, with what you mean by a memory leak?
Right, well, this is something you've got to look out in software development. Sometimes you allocate memory dynamically for some temporary period of time, and then you've always got to be sure to delete the memory block when you've finished with it. If you don't, you can end up with a memory leak where your program just starts using more and more memory until eventually you run out of memory. So you've always got, if you're testing something thoroughly, you should always test for memory leaks. Make sure your new component doesn't have any memory leaks.
And what were the implications of a memory leak for the functioning of riposte?
Oh well, I don't think the figures were that big a memory leak. So as long as it's small, you can get away with it. It's only if you have a big memory leak that you have real serious issues. As long as it's just some small problem, then you can get away with that.
Could we have on screen, please, FUJ 001 54684? This is a peak log relating to a call from the National Business Support Centre on the 20th of December 2007. The log reference is PC 01-52376. And you have dealt with this peak at paragraphs 29 to 33 of your first statement. About halfway down the page, we can see a summary of the issue being raised. Starting with Ibrahim. Ibrahim from the MBSC has asked that an issue be investigated by our software team regarding discrepancies still showing when the MIS stock unit is rolled to clear the local suspense account. And then under incident history, there's some more detail. It says on Wednesday 12/12, the BM stock unit had a gain of £465.73. As this stock unit rolled over, it was forced to clear local suspense, £1,083.76. The gain of £465.73 did not go to local suspense and is not included in the £1,083.76. This was not the last stock unit to roll over. The last stock unit to roll over was MIS at 10:20 on 13/12. This stock unit had no discrepancies. MIS is a correction stock unit and was not inactive as it rolled over every BP. The suspense and final balances corroborate the above as the office has sent us copies. the trading statement agrees with the suspense account and that BM stock cleared suspense but did not send its gain to suspense, the trading position line should always show 0. Under the BM stock column, it shows 465.73. I have had a trial done on BM stock to see if this is showing the 465.73, but it is not. So the problem being reported was one of discrepancies in the account, is that right?
Yes, that's right. That's correct, yes.
And if we could go to page 3 of this document, please. There is an entry made by you on the 2nd of January 2008, that second entry down, in which you say, the fact that the EPOS code is not resilient to errors is endemic. There seems little point in fixing it in this one particular case because there will be many others to catch you out. For example, when I tried to balance with CAB's process running, I found that declaring cash failed with the same sort of error message, ! Pausing there, can you explain, please, the role which EPOS code played in relation to the error which was operating in this case?
Well, I mean, the EPOS code, that is what the stock balancing is written. It is the EPOS code. Stock balancing code is part of the EPOS code, but EPOS code is more general than that. There's lots of EPOS code. For example, just selling a stamp would be EPOS code, but also, more specifically, stock balancing would be part of the EPOS code.
Which errors was EPOS code not resilient to?
Well, it's we just spotted cases where the error handling was not as good as it could have been, which we tried to eliminate over the years. So sometimes calls to write out a message would fail silently, though, as I mentioned before, though silently to the code, you always get a red event written into the Windows event log, so the postmaster wouldn't be directly aware of the failure, but analysis of the logs after the event would show the problem. In my opinion, it would be far better if, when something like this went wrong, immediately the software should abort and the postmaster should just be told an error has occurred, please contact the help desk or something like that. So the error handling wasn't as good as it could have been if designed properly from the start, but that's not to say the evidence wasn't there to spot the problem after the event, because you would get information in the Windows event log, etc. So what I'm saying is the error handling in an ideal world could have been done much better, but nevertheless, it's not to say that it's you can't detect the problem, because you can in many cases.
Apologies, and that is what you're referring to, is it, when you say that the code was not resilient to errors, to the error handling process?
That's right, yes. So it's just not as good as it could have been. Ideal behaviour, any problem, log it, abort, just say to the postmaster, please contact the help desk. That would be the ideal error handling in my view.
And the reason for this, was this because there were deficiencies in the EPOS code itself?
Well, in the error handling, I mean, I thought the EPOS code was quite clever, really, but in the error handling, it wasn't done as well as it could have been done had the time been taken to do so. But I think the code itself, in programming, you have what's called the happy path. The happy path is when everything works well. In the happy path, there's no problems.
Was this view that the fact that EPOS code was not resilient to errors was endemic, a view which was held within your team at the time?
Well, I only spoke to a few colleagues about the issue. I could give you some hearsay quotes if you like, but I can't give names, I don't think.
Were there others who shared your view?
Well, the people I talked to didn't seem to think that way. For example, one colleague said, well, you've got to assume all this fundamental stuff works. You've just got to assume that. Another colleague said, well, when this all was developed in the first place, it was assumed that all the error handling would be automatically added later. So the two colleagues I informally mentioned this to didn't seem to quite share my views, to be honest. But that's not, I only didn't mention it to everyone in the entire team, though, so.
In your entry, you gave an example of trying to balance with CAB's process running and declaring cache failing with the same sort of error message. Can you explain what the CAB's process was, please?
Yes, well, it's a piece of software run each evening about 7 o'clock, which just, you have end of day markers which divide each day, and it just summarises all the transactions that go on in the day in some way. I can't remember the details beyond that, but it's just a summary of transactions that occur each day, run about 7 o'clock every evening.
You describe in your first statement at paragraph 27 that an issue relating to the CAB's process could cause potentially incorrect data to be presented to the audit system. Is that what happened here?
Yes, that's right. I mean, that's right. So because of it, the messages logged are incomplete, yes. Nothing's wrong with the audit system itself, but the data to be presented to it later would be incomplete.
You go on in your entry in this peak to say this: it may be worth passing on the general message to the HNGX team that in many cases code should always try and exit gracefully after an error and not just blunder on regardless. This is a perfect example of why. Had the balancing code exited gracefully, then if the user had tried again after CAB's process had finished working, then all would have been well. Was the effect of this, the code not exiting gracefully, that to which you refer at paragraphs 29 and 31 of your first statement, that the failure is silent?
That's right, yes. Well, silent to the postmaster. As I say, information is available in the event log. It would be available to a diagnostician looking at it, but silent to the postmaster.
Could we have paragraph 31 of Mr. Barnes's first statement on screen, please? It is page 15 of WITN 098 70100. You explain the silent failure point in this way at paragraph 31. The fact that the failure was silent was really bad error handling. Good programming practices would be to abort, i.e. for the code to stop running, with a clear error message. It is better to produce no results than incorrect results, and good error handling should be coded from the start. However, my understanding is that in peak PC 0152376, an error was written to the audit log and then processing continued. So although the operator at the post office branch would not know anything had gone wrong, a detailed analysis of the audit log after the event would have revealed the problem. This is substantially the same point, is it not, as the point which arose in the context of the riposte error under CI 132R in 2000, the lack of an error message, meaning that the user is not alerted to an error in the system having occurred. Would you agree that it is substantially the same point?
Yes, that's right, yes, it's the same sort of thing.
And it is arising now in 2007 into 2008. Could we have back on screen, please, FUJ 001 54684? Page 3, please. You proposed a fix to the problem on the 2nd of January 2008. And you explained it in this way, starting 4 paragraphs down in your entry. For the time being, I propose a much cheaper solution than rewriting a lot of EPOS error handling. The problem is that because of a previous peak, CAB's process writes out messages atomically. It does a start transaction quite early on, which creates the lock, then initiates writing lots of transactions with create message and persistent objects with put object, and finally really writes them with a call to end transaction, which ends the lock. If something else tries to write a transaction whilst CAB's process has things logged, then it will time out after 10 seconds. Hence, if CAB's process takes more than 10 seconds to run, you could get this sort of problem. In this case, CAB's process took 33 seconds to run, which gives a significant window of opportunity for this sort of problem to occur. I suggest addressing this matter directly by having CAB's process store all that it wants to write out to a collection and then only really write it out at the very end. In this way, the system will be locked for less than 10 seconds, and there will be no possibility of this sort of problem. Then, 2/3 of the way down the page, you deal with the impact on user. And you say benefit of making the fix. It will no longer matter if CAB's process is running when the user tries to do many sorts of different things, balancing included. What does the user have to do to get this problem? Do anything which involves writing a transaction whilst CAB's process is running after 1900 hours, when CAB's process has sufficient work to do so that it takes more than 10 seconds to run, so probably on the larger offices. So just to be clear, you were warning here that the CAB's process issue could impact upon balancing.
Oh, well, if the postmaster's working after 7 o'clock, yes, that's right. Well, or to be more precise, he's working through 7 o'clock because that's when this process ran. So I suppose it would have been all right if you started balancing at 7:30, for example.
You go on to cover the impact on operations, and you say benefit of fix that may not be visible to end user, less support calls. So in summary, you thought the risks of running a fix were outweighed by the benefits.
Yes, it was quite an easy fix, really, so I thought quite safe.
And under those risks, what live problems will there be if we do not issue this fix? Problems will continue to occur if the counter is being used whilst CAB's process is running, in those cases when it takes more than 10 seconds to run. And that, referring to that risk again in terms of operations, is this a high-risk area which changes have caused problems in the past? Yes, however, the fix proposed is self-contained and is considered unlikely to cause any problems. Going over the page, please. Towards the bottom of this page, there is an entry from David Snedden, dated the 10th of January 2008. And he says this: "It has been decided that no fix will be carried out for the time being, given the rarity of the problem. Should the problem become more prevalent, then the need for a fix will be reviewed once again. In the meantime, KEL DSED 5628Q has been created to cover the problem. With regard to this instance of the problem, we have already passed details and corrective actions necessary onto Post Office Limited by means of a BIM issued by the MSU. Therefore, no further action is necessary and this call can simply be closed." Should we take it from this that a decision was made that despite your recommendation, it was decided by the 10th of January 2008 that no wider fix would be implemented. So we have this narrow fix, but it appears no wider fix to the problem.
That's right. That is correct.
Could we have on screen, please, FUJ 001-55261? This is an email chain from September 2008. The first email in the chain starts on page 2. Could we turn to that, please? Towards the bottom of the page, this is an email from Gareth Jenkins to Roy Birkinshaw, copied to you, Steve Evans, John Burton, and Anne Chambers. It is dated the 4th of September 2008, and it reads as follows. Roy, as requested yesterday, I've had a look at the relevant code and a chat with Gerald, and I'm satisfied that the fix that Gerald has proposed for this peak is low risk and should remove this particular cause of timeouts. The actual peak is now closed, so I'm not sure exactly what process should be followed, but effectively what I think we need is for the peak to be reopened and sent to RMF for further consideration in light of recent investigations. Are you and Steve able to progress it from here? In the email above, Steve Evans asks you to liaise with Dave Snedden and Lionel to get this reopened and then back to RMF. What was RMF?
Release Management Forum.
Going back to the bottom of page 1 of this document, please. This appears to lead to an email from John Budworth to you and a number of others, including Mick Peach and Gareth Jenkins. And he says this, all peak 164429, clone of 152376, has arrived in RMF. At the moment, this is the only peak in RMF. I'm not sure why this has been revisited by CounterDev and Gareth, as we decided we were not going to fix this back in January. Has something in live increased the problem, or has it been, I think that should be been raised as an issue by the customer or elsewhere? I don't know. Anyway, CAB's process is part of LFS counter. I'm not expecting any other LFS change during Horizon, but it might be worth looking at LFS related peak 147179. Then going to the email above that, please. We have an email from Steve Evans. I note that Mick has replied, and yes, this one has become a higher priority with the customer. It is not related to PC 147179, which I've actually just returned no fault in product, so doesn't exist anymore. Gerald has requested a target of T86, and he has gone off on leave until the 23rd of September. A fix will not be available before the 25th. In this email, the customer, was that the post office?
Yes, that's correct, yes.
So was it your understanding that the post office were, at least by this point, aware of the issue that had arisen?
Where does it say the customer exactly?
The first line of that email, I note that Mick has replied, and yes, this one has become a higher priority.
Yes, that must be the case, I suppose. Yes, must be.
John Budworth's email reply is above that. And he says, thanks all, I'll check RMF stack again tomorrow, but nothing other than this peak in there currently. I'll authorise peak 164429 for T86, but would like to move this forward sooner rather than later, so test and deploy as early as possible in October. To the extent that you are able to recall, were you involved in any discussions about the merits of a fix between the 10th of January 2008 decision recorded by David Snedden in that original peak and the email from Gareth Jenkins on the 4th of September 2008?
No, I was kept out of the loop completely. I would have been busy looking at other peaks, I expect. So no, I wasn't aware of that.
You explain at paragraph 32 of your statement, that is your first statement, that having reviewed the peak at document reference FUJ 001-55366, you can see that a fix was applied on the 25th of September 2008 and that you were involved in applying that fix. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. From just my review of documents recently because of this, my witness statement, yes.
You also explain at paragraph 32 that you had some involvement checking event logs in January 2009. Could we have on screen, please, FUJ 001-54836? About halfway down the page is an email from Penny Thomas to you and Stephen Meek, copied to Gareth Jenkins and Anne Chambers. It is dated the 31st of December. Apologies, if we can scroll out, please. That bottom email, the 31st of December 2008, please. The email is dated the 31st of December 2008. The subject line is ARQs 499 to 509, and then a reference 475329, LPD 19 Jan 09. Ms. Thomas says, "Hi Gerald, could you please check events for the following?" And then giving that reference with a date range of the 21st of September 07 to the 17th of August 08. Many thanks, Penny. You then send an email in reply on the 5th of January 2009, a bit further up the page. Scrolling down, please. We can just zoom out and see the whole document. That's fine. And you appear in that email to attach some results. Hi, Penny, I attach the results. Regards, Gerald. And then at the top of the page, there is an email from Anne Chambers to Penny Thomas, copied to Gareth Jenkins and to you. And it says 475329 counter 3 lock events, 28th of March 2008, 2208, checkpoints being written during Smart Post upgrade. Just confirm no one logged in. Does this description at the top help you at all to say what you were checking events for or not?
I could only remember the general process. Once I joined the audit team, and I think subsequently, I didn't know this at the time, but reading all the material for my appearance today, I've discovered it. Because of my bold statement, the error handling wasn't very good. A new system was introduced where the event logs was always checked before any spreadsheet, spreadsheets of transactions were sent to the audit team by the audit team to check that there were no suspicious events that occurred at the time of the transactions reported in the ARQ. So a database of all the event logs were extracted. They were stored in some sort of database, and I was partly involved in, when requested, getting the events back for a given date range. So what Anne's saying is she's looked at these events and decided that other than these 3 lock events, there was nothing suspicious in the event logs that I returned to her. She's saying those are the suspicious ones, and moreover, she's saying as long as no one was logged in at the time, they don't matter.
Can you say whether this check related to the cabs process issue we've been looking at or not?
I think, as I say, because I have reviewed the what went on from the information presented me for my appearance today, I can say yes, because of my comments, not necessarily the cabs issue, just because I said in general these riposte errors can be silent to the postmasters in general. Well, the cabs process as well, but in general it is the case that the policy was adopted of always checking all the event logs for any ARQ events presented, so that we can be, they could be more certain that nothing like that had gone on. So that was a new, because of my, it now transpires from what I've read, because of my comments, this new process was adopted. But it was all never, at the time I knew nothing about it. It was all completely silent to me, but I can see that is the case from what I've read subsequently, just, well, in recent weeks.
Could we have on screen, please, FUJ 001-55402? About halfway down the page is an email from Penny Thomas to Steve Evans, among others. It is dated the 8th of January 2009, so 3 days after you replied with results in the email chain we've just looked at. Ms. Thomas says this, under a subject audit issue: as a result of our meeting today, the following actions have been agreed. 1, we will event check all transaction data supplied to POL where that data falls between May 07 and November 08. The check will focus on events where the cabs process has produced a lock from 1900 hours to 1910 local time. 3, Penny to provide a list of 195 outlets with time frame. 4, Alan to provide query. 5, Gerald to run the event check through the database. 6, Steve Denham to be advised the number of residual events, and we'll discuss with Mick Peach. 7, residual events to be reviewed. 8, Penny or Cover will check ALQ data retained in the audit room or retrieve message stores as required. 9, Pete to update security incident register. So it appears that an agreed action for you, although you are not on the recipient list here, was for you to run the event check through the database. Can you help with what the event check was?
Yes, well, I can remember this moderately well. It was all automated later on, but before I joined the audit team, as I said, they got all the events back from the audit system for all counters, and they stored them all in a database so that for any given date range, and I assume FAD code 2, I can't remember it specifically, I imagine FAD code 2, you could get all the post office counter events output in a spreadsheet which could be supplied.
Ms. Thomas's email was then forwarded to you by Steve Evans, scrolling up the page please, with a request to discuss. Gerald, we will need to discuss this below in the AM, Steve. Do you recall discussing the task you had been allocated, Mr. Evans?
I understand the task. I don't remember specifically discussing it, but if it says in the email this was going to happen, I imagine it did. I certainly remember the database of all the events. I remember that quite clearly.
Could we have on screen, please, FUJ 001-55421? About a third of the way down the page, we have an email from Penny Thomas to Dave Posnett from the Post Office. It is dated the 4th of February 2009. The subject line is security incident. And Ms. Thomas says this: we are pleased to advise that our analysis of data covering the 1st of May 07 to the 30th of November 08 has been completed. The event logs have been checked for all data provided to POL as a result of the 195 ARQs, which fall within the time frame. The total of 27 instances of concern were identified. All instances have been fully analysed, and we can confirm that the locking was caused by contention between the EOD process and a riposte checkpoint being written. No transactions or balancing activities carried out at the branches were affected. There is reference here to the 195 ARQs which fell within the time frame. There was a reference in Penny Thomas's email of the 8th of January 2009 to there being 195 outlets within the time frame. Would you agree, therefore, that this email seems to be referring to the same issue?
I would say almost certainly, but I mean, I couldn't be 100% certain, I suppose, but I would say very likely.
Do you recall being made aware of the outcome of the checks that were done on the data provided to the post office?
No, it was all, unless it was copied to me in an email, I didn't read it or something, it was all, I was aware of the checking of events, but the reason it was done was, at the time, not something I was aware of, though now I can see the reason. But at the time, I don't think I was aware, actually, no.
And your task of running the event check through the database, was that to return results which were sent on to others for analysis?
That's correct, yes, that's correct.
You offer some reflections on the CAB's process issue at paragraph 33 of your first statement. Could we have that on screen, please? It is page 16 of WITN 098 70100. You say here at paragraph 33, the CAB's process issue highlighted a problem that could easily be caused by another system process at any time of day. In retrospect, error handling should have been tightened generally. For example, when I wrote the software to migrate from Legacy Horizon to HNGX, I kept this in mind. The postmaster pressed the migration button which appeared on migration day, and if anything went wrong, the postmaster got a message displayed saying something to the effect of, "An error has occurred, please contact the help desk." The program then stopped further processing and detailed evidence was recorded that would enable the help desk to identify the issue, possibly after escalating the issue to me. In my opinion, this sort of error handling is the safest. When something goes wrong, everyone knows about it immediately and nothing is committed. In this case, the post office branch would not be migrated and needed to continue using Legacy Horizon a bit longer. Does it follow from what you say in this paragraph that in retrospect error handling should have been tightened generally? That although there was a fix done following the CAB's process issue, as far as you were aware, there was not a wider change to coding to prevent silent failures in the system?
Not in a comprehensive manner. I think little improvements were done all the time. But I think ideally, just as when I designed this migration software, before they even started, they should consider the possibility of some system called failing. What do we do if that happens? And when you're choosing a cash account, the obvious thing to do is just display a message to the postmaster that an error has happened. Please contact the help desk. Just as in the migration software, similar thing. Anything goes wrong, just log as much information as possible and just say to the postmaster clearly and precisely, please contact the help desk. Don't just sort of roll over silently as though he thinks everything's fine when it isn't. That, in my opinion, no, I mean, hindsight's a wonderful thing, isn't it? But in my opinion, that's the way error handling should have been done.
Should the Chair take it from this paragraph that you consider the CAB's process issue was a missed opportunity to address deficient coding practices which led to silent failures?
No, well, I mean, I think it was we're just about to replace Horizon with H&GX, so the better thing to do would make sure the H&GX software learned the lesson, I think. It would have just been too expensive to do a thorough job at that stage.
There was, in fact, another issue with which you had involvement in January 2008, in addition to the CABS process issue, which caused you to comment on the adequacy of the error handling process. And that's one that's addressed at paragraph 38A of your first statement. Could we have on screen, please, FUJ 001552224? This is a clone of another peak, and this cloned call contains some comments from you following the report of a stock unit rollover issue, which was being experienced by a user in branch. Could we go to page 6 of this document, please? The second entry on this page is made by you and is dated the 15th of January 2008. And starting on the second line of your entry, you say this: the problem was in fact already flagged. A message in the audit log pin pointed the precise message that caused the problem. The error handling of balancing is deficient in some ways. In most cases, an error is just logged and the code blunders on regardless, leaving the system locked. What should happen is that the error should be logged, the process cleanly aborted, an error message displayed to the user and the system left so that he can do something else. I hope the HNGX version is much better. I'm not sure it is worthwhile spending time improving the EPOS version, which is shortly to be replaced. It would be better spending the same effort making the HNGX version better. I had already requested that this be advised to the HNGX team in PC 0152376. So you were once again flagging the error handling problem as you saw it.
That's right, yes.
And as far as you were aware, is it right that no material changes were made to this wider problem relating to error handling at the time?
Well, it would have just been uneconomic. It was too late. But we were always doing little improvements. So, but it would have just been. You see, once the system's rolled out and you start is in maintenance role, and developers like I are just maintaining it. Always, when you do a fix, you really want the minimum code change to solve the problem, because it reduces the amount of regression testing needed for the release. To comprehensively rewrite the error handling would just be a massive job. That would be a massive regression testing exercise, and so would be extremely expensive. And since it was just being rewritten anyway, it seemed particularly pointless.
You say in your statement that you bore in mind the need for good error handling processes when you wrote the software to migrate from Legacy Horizon to Horizon Online. And you've just discussed the issues that would have been on a shorter term basis making changes. Can you help with whether there were any other steps taken by you or anyone else within Fujitsu to ensure that good error handling processes were introduced across the board, either at the time of the migration to Horizon Online or later?
Well, I can't. I passed on my comments to the HNGX team. I hope they got passed on. I can't say, though, I wasn't not really involved in that software. Certainly the migration software I wrote very much took that into account, and I wrote it with very comprehensive error handling in the first instance, and indeed every counter was migrated from Horizon to HNGX with not very many issues, really.
Sir, I wonder if that might be a convenient moment for a short afternoon break. I think you're on mute, sir.
Does short mean less than 15 minutes?
Yes, please. 10 minutes, sir, if we could.
Okay, 10 minutes. So when do we
I
start?
think that takes us to 25 to.
Right, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Hello, sir. Can you see and hear us?
Yes, thank you.
Mr. Barnes, turning please to events after you moved to the audit team in around 2009, you say in your first statement at paragraph 13 that when you joined the audit team, Fujitsu was changing from using Isha's riposte software to Fujitsu's own bespoke software, HNGX. Can you explain, please, what that meant for the software which was used to perform ARQs for the post office?
Right, well, it's because we're no longer using Escher's riposte system. Well, there are two things. First of all, the audit software used the Escher software to produce its spreadsheets of results, which I only discovered this through reading. Really, I wasn't there at the time, but it used the Escher software to produce its spreadsheets of results. So that was one thing. So therefore, just to save the license fee that we paid to Escher, we wanted to get rid of that component. But on top of that, in addition, the audit team had to cope with the new transactions which were going to be written by the new HNGX software, which was a Fujitsu rewrite of the everything that was done by riposte before was going to be rewritten by Fujitsu. So the audit software had to cope with this new format transactions too. And so a team that mainly completed their work before I joined the audit team wrote a component called the Query Manager Service, whose purpose was to produce the spreadsheets very similar to that which was produced by the old audit system for riposte, and in addition, at the same time, enable it to produce those spreadsheets for the new HNGX software.
And is it right that it was, is it Xquilla or Xkiller?
Xquilla.
Xquilla, which was used after you joined the audit team to run audit queries?
That's correct, yes, that's right.
And is it right that the audit team still uses Xquilla to run audit queries today?
That's correct, yes.
Does it follow from the fact that you only joined the audit team in around 2009 that you would not have been familiar with the high-level design documents relating to legacy Horizon, covering the design and requirements of the audit harvester created in the early 2000s?
No, I wouldn't have been, I wasn't very aware of that. I knew a little bit about it, but I wasn't aware of the details.
You deal with the audit query process for Horizon Online at paragraph 16 of your first statement. Could we have that on screen, please? It is page 6 of WITN 098700100. At paragraph 16, you say, in relation to HNGX, the process of generating a spreadsheet of transactions similar to the ARQ spreadsheet is as follows. Files to be audited are placed on many shares across the estate. A share is a folder of a computer that is accessible by another computer. B, gatherers on the audit server bring the files into the audit server, where they are stored on a special long-term storage device, known as an audit archive, Centera to begin with, which was later replaced by Eternus, and indexed using a structured query language, SQL, database on the audit server. A checksum of the file is also stored too. A checksum is effectively a unique numerical identifier that is allocated to a file. And C, a special tool on audit workstations can then be used to display stored files and retrieve them. As these stored files are retrieved, their checksum is checked. Some of the stored files are files of transactions, and extra software is available to generate spreadsheets of transactions. Is it right that you were not personally involved in responding to ARQs that were submitted by the Post Office to Fujitsu in relation to investigations, court proceedings, or disciplinary proceedings?
That's correct. I simply was part of the team that supported the software they used.
You do address in your statements, however, your involvement in a number of issues which could affect the accuracy of ARQ data. And one of these is the duplicate transactions issue, which arose in 2010. You've addressed this issue at paragraphs 34 to 37 of your first statement. And at paragraph 34, you describe the result of the issue which arose to have been that multiple instances of one transaction could appear on a spreadsheet generated as part of the ARQ process, and it would not be clear that they were the same transaction. Is that an accurate summary?
Exactly. That was the problem, yes.
Could we have on screen, please, FUJ 001 72183? This is a peak with reference PC 0200468. The summary reads, Horizon Audit Spreadsheet Producing Duplicate Transactions. And there is an impact statement dated the 23rd of June 2010, which says this, from Penny, in a nutshell, the HNGX application is not removing duplicate transactions, which may have been recorded twice on the audit server, and they are appearing in the ARQ returns. For the old Horizon application, Riposte automatically removed duplicate entries. An initial analysis shows that 1/3 of all ARQ returns since the new application has been in play have duplicated transactions. Going then to the entries in the log themselves, the second entry is dated the 21st of June 2010 and is made by Penny Thomas. And she says, while performing an audit retrieval for branch 072128, duplicate transactions have been found on the 3rd of June 09. Initial analysis shows that duplicate records are held in two different audited TMS files. Then scrolling down to the final entry on this page, please, the 22nd of June 2010. This is an entry made by you, and we have this. The processing is done by query DLL.DLL. The way it works is that it processes all the results in a given file, building up an internal table of transaction sequences for that file. Then at the very end of processing the file, it dumps the internal table to the RFI query file sequence table. It does not cross-check the transactions in one file against those in another file. You say two solutions are possible. The easy solution is that as each transaction is processed, a check is made in the RFI query file sequence table, and if it is already there, the transaction is ignored, writing a warning to the query log. The problem with this solution is that a query needs to be made to the database for every transaction. The more difficult solution, the internal table, which at the moment is built up on a per file basis, is changed to being built up on a per query basis. The check for duplicate transactions is then done within the internal table. This is a much more thorough approach, but will take much more work. Then there is a further entry from you, also dated the 22nd of June, which outlines the detail of the fix for this problem. And about halfway down the page, we have impact on user. And impact on user says occasionally duplicate transactions are listed in the spreadsheets produced and presented to court for prosecution cases. These can give the defence team grounds to question the evidence. Then further down, in response to the question, have relevant KELs been created or updated? You say no KELs have been created for this since we intend to fully resolve the issue shortly. If we scroll down, there are risks that are outlined of releasing and not releasing a fix. And here you say, if we do not fix this problem, our spreadsheets presented in court are liable to be brought into doubt if duplicate transactions are spotted. Going over the page, please, the entry of the 23rd of June 2010 from Penny Thomas. Initial analysis of all ARQ returns since the HNGX application has been implemented identifies approximately 1/3 of all returns have duplicate entries. This is now extremely urgent. Scrolling down, please, towards the bottom of the page, there is an entry on the 7th of July 2010. And right at the bottom of the page, that last entry, it says fix released to PIT. Can you just help with what that means?
Yes, that's the team which generated the actual thing that was automatically delivered to the various platforms, which in this case would have been the audit server.
Then over the page...
Post office integration team, possibly. I can't, I'm just trying to think what it's... Maybe post office integrate, I'm guessing. Or pathway integration team, something like that.
Then over the page, please, to the second entry of the 7th of July 2010. And it says here the peak has been test installed in integration. What does this mean, please?
Well, integration, that's the PIT team that they actually produce. So development produce V baselines with the fix in, and that goes to the integration team who produce D baselines, which are ready for automatic deployment on the various platforms, which in this case would be the audit server.
There are then a series of entries which follow before the final entry on this page, dated the 1st of September 2010, made by Penny Thomas, which notes fix successfully deployed, closing call. So it seems from this peak that although the issue was being raised in June 2010, it was not the subject of a fix until the 1st of September 2010. Is that right, from what we can see on this log?
Well, that's certainly when Penny could see that it was successfully deployed. Well, roughly speaking, yes. It's the you've got 30th of July. John Rogers, testing successfully completed and documented in LST. It takes after it's get tested in LST. It doesn't usually take long before it's deployed to live. So, from 30th of July to 1st of September. Sounds a bit on the long time, but anyway, that sort of thing, yes, that sort of thing.
Can we have on screen, please, FUJ 001 71848? The reference on this peak is PC0205805. The summary is audit duplicate message sequences are not recorded by fast ARQ retrieval. The call was opened on the 27th of October 2010, if we can scroll down a little to see that. Before we turn to the detail of the peak, can you explain, please, the difference between fast and slow ARQs?
Right, well, the slow ARC was the original method, which was a sort of more labour-intensive system for the operator, but more flexible, in which, first of all, they had to supply the FAD, the date range of the files they wanted to get back, and then they went to another screen to supply the date range they wanted to filter the FAD for, and then they went to another screen to supply the query they wanted to run on the FAD. So it was all quite doable, but someone called Steve Meek, whose name's come up before, automated this process. So you had one screen which you have the FAD, the date range, and also an optional number of extra days for files gathered late. And you just set it going with one form. So it was just quicker for the operator. The file start was quicker for the operator.
And the issue addressed in this peak arose in the context of fast ARQs, is that right?
That's correct, yeah. Well, that's what it says. I mean, that's what it says. So.
And the impact statement dated the 5th of November 2010 appears to have been entered by you and says this: the fast ARQ interface does not provide the user with any indication of duplicate records/messages. This omission means that we are unaware of the presence of duplicate transactions. In the event that duplicates are retrieved and returned to POL without our knowledge, the integrity of the data provided comes into question. The customer, and indeed the defence and the court, would assume that the duplicates were bona fide transactions, and this would be incorrect. There are a number of high-profile court cases in the pipeline, and it is imperative that we provide sound, accurate records. Looking then, please, to the entry at the bottom of this page, dated the 1st of November 2010. Again, it's an entry made by you, and it says, Andy and I have looked at this. We think the method most compatible with existing behaviour is as follows. Check for duplicates for HNGX in a similar method to how duplicates are checked for in Horizon. Do you mean legacy Horizon?
That's right, that's correct, yes.
For Horizon, they are legitimately logged in the audit log and then ignored because it is just that identical messages are stored by mistake in more than one transaction file. For HNGX, in the fast ARQ case, their detection will cause them to be logged in the query log and a count kept of how many there are. They will not be ignored. And then you go on to detail a proposed fix. You made a further entry on the 5th of November 2010, which reads, I have built a prototype query DLL.dll which solves this problem. Now, if duplicate HNGX messages are detected, the fast ARQ fails at the client with the message filtering failed, displayed at the bottom of its form, and on the server in the query log, there are detailed messages describing the duplicates found. Then there is a further, more detailed entry from you, also dated the 5th of November 2010, where you provide a technical summary. You say HNGX can rarely produce transactions with duplicate journal sequence numbers. At the moment, when running an FAS ARQ on the audit server, these duplicates are not noticed. This means that the evidence presented by the prosecution team may show duplicate transactions without it being noticed. The defence team may spot this and call into question the integrity of our data. Scrolling down, please, to the bottom of the page, impact on user. HNGX transactions with duplicate JSNs may not be noticed. This will call into question the reliability of evidence presented by the prosecution team. Going to the top of the next page, please. On have relevant KELs been created or updated? It was not felt that a KEL was required because there are only 2 people in the prosecution team and they are both fully aware of the problem. Who were the 2 people in the prosecution team? Can you recall?
Well, Penny Thomas would have been one.
Do you recall Andy Dunks?
Well, he certainly was there at one, or still is. Might have been Andy I was referring to. I can't, quite likely, I would say quite likely, but I couldn't say with certainty. The only one I can say with certainty is Penny Thomas.
Whose decision was it whether a known error log was created?
Well, I think that's, if I'm writing this, then it's me, really, I suppose. You've either got to produce something in the KEL, or you've got to give an explanation of why you're not producing something in the KEL. But, well, my explanation is quite simple. There's only 2 people, and they're well aware of it anyway, so there's no point having a KEL entry because they know about the issue. So.
This peak was opened around 2 months after the last peak we looked at was closed, following a fix on the 1st of September 2010. Is the issue discussed in this peak the same as that discussed in the previous peak?
Yes, that's right. That's right. It would have been the same fix as applied before, I think, would have been present here. So you get, whenever you do the ARQ, you get the query handler log is always generated. That would have listed the duplicates here anyway. I can't quite remember what we're fixing here. Not too sure exactly what we were doing. But
Can you help? Apologies, I interrupted.
Well, yeah, I'm not sure, Andy. I'm not sure exactly what change would have been going on here. Does it say somewhere exactly what we were going to do to address this issue?
Well, going for a little further back up the page. If we can just stop there. Just casting your eye down there, does that help you at all? It says the fix, for example, does the fix require any manual deployment baselines? The fix does not require any manual installation. It will just be a replacement file. The coding of the fix is complete. However, further regression tests still need to be run.
Okay, well, I can't remember exactly. All I know is what happens right now. The intermediate steps of how we got there, I'm not too sure of. So,
putting it another way, why was there still an issue if a fix had been implemented on the 1st of September?
Yeah, I'm not too sure, to be honest. I would have thought on the first fix we'd logged all the duplicates in the query handler log. That would have been the case here. Whether we're doing something more, maybe what it might have been is we simply, yes, it could be that we actually got the fast arc to actually say, right, duplicates of occurred, we're stopping. It could have just been that the fast arc just failed and you'd get just some message saying, look in the query handler log, and then you would see the duplicates listed. Might have been that. I can't from memory remember exactly what the fix was. It might have been that. So maybe it just stopped running and refused to produce anything.
Scrolling down, please, and over the page, looking for an entry on the 24th of November 2010. over the page again.
Oh, and Andrew's written something.
That entry there, the 24th of November 2010, Andrew Mansfield. Sarah Selwyn has requested an audit maintenance release prior to the next DC audit plan release, due to go live on the 14th of May 2011. 5 peaks are requested for this maintenance release and they're listed. This is an edited version of the text of Sarah's original email to Sheila Bamber. We would like to get these peaks targeted ASAP, since these are impacting SSC and the litigation support group in their support of the post office litigations. There is a risk that these teams will not be able to fulfil their OLTs to the post office as defined in SMV SDM SD 0017. In terms of when the issue was fixed, you refer to another peak at paragraph 37 of your first statement, which you say suggests that the issue with duplicate transactions was fixed in or around November 2010. Could we have that on screen, please? It's FUJ 001 71892. The reference for this peak is PC 0205353. The summary reads, LST audit, duplicate message sequences are not reported if they are identical. This is not a peak log which contains entries made by you, but since you refer to it in your statement, can we take it that you have reviewed it?
Yes.
And the impact statement here says, it is important that any duplicate messages in the retrieved audit data are highlighted to the user. Duplicates are not being highlighted when 2 message sequences have the same start and end message sequence numbers. So it gives some examples. Sequences X to Y would not be reported as duplicates. Sequences X to Y would report a duplicate. This is a very serious issue. We experienced the presence of duplicate Horizon transactions which were not removed when the HNGX application was introduced. POL did not accept a manual workaround and the ARQ service basically stopped for almost 2 months. The issue contained in this peak came to light on the 21st of October, and I have instigated the creation of a macro which will identify if duplicated transactions are contained within a spreadsheet. We will need to generate an additional spreadsheet containing the JVN and check for duplicates using the macro. This will increase our workload by 15 to 20 minutes each for each ARQ containing HNGX transaction records. The real problem will arise if we do identify duplicate transactions, because POL is not likely to accept a workaround for transaction records used for litigation support. And that statement is dated the 25th of October 2010. Is this the same duplicates issue as the fast ARQ?
No. It's a much more. It looks like a much more specific issue. It's when 2 message sequences have the same start and end message sequence numbers. So it's some very. It looks like some very specific issue that Andy Mansfield fixed.
If we could go to page 5 of this document, please, top of the page. An entry on the 25th of November 2010 reads, cleared in release 3.13 audit system and tested in LST under release notes HRU 7206 and HRU 7239, closing call. Was this the entry which led you to believe that the duplicate transactions issue had been resolved in or around November 2010? This is the document
Yes,
reference.
I think so. I mean, I get a bit confused with the exact timescale, but what happens right now is that the spreadsheets we send to and has been for a long time, is that the spreadsheets we send always have, in a summary sheet, details of all the duplicates and gaps. So each spreadsheet we submit has all that information in the spreadsheet. That's the present and been that way for a while, but there's been, getting there, there's been a slightly not so, we haven't got there in one go, as it were. That is the way it's been for a long while.
The last entry we looked at in this was on page 4. Apologies, if we can have back on screen, please, FUJ 001 71848. Looking at page 4, please. Going back to Andrew Mansfield's entry dated the 24th of November 2010. That was the last entry that we looked at. Going please to the top of the next page, to page 5. There's an entry from you dated the 3rd of December 2010 saying, a fix will now be prepared and tested. It will then be stored in VSS Inf DOM. It will be handed over on the 24th of December. There is then an entry on the 14th of December from you, and you say it's now been decided that the detection of duplicate HNGX messages will not terminate the fast ARCs. Is that supposed to be ARQs?
That's right, yes.
Duplicates will be logged by query DLL at the server initially in queryhandler.log and eventually in the closed log both for Horizon and HNGX transactions. Duplicate HNGX transactions will also be logged by the client in its spreadsheets, but duplicate Horizon transactions will be eliminated at the server silently, since they are all known always to be benign. Then on the 29th of December, the entry from you, we have fixed by version 4.1.0.1 of NWB legato recover.exe and version 4.004 of querydll.dll. Handed over in audit extract SRV with a reference. Going to the bottom of the page, please, the entry on the 19th of January. Tested in LSD as part of audit release 3.4. Duplicate message sequences are now recorded in the query handler enclosure RFI log files for both slow and fast FRQs. There are some further entries over the page and a final entry on the 27th of April 2011, which reads, there are 2 entries here. John Budworth, first of all, applied to live 3rd of February 2011 as part of audit release 03.24. And then we have call closed, entry by Penny Thomas on the 27th of April 2011. Having looked at this document, does it remain your understanding that the duplicate transactions issue was fixed in or around November 2010, or do you think that may have been later?
It looks like it might have been later from this. The complete fix, yes, looks like it might have been later.
At paragraph 36B of your statement, you address another problem which arose in relation to fast ARQs, relating not to duplicate transactions, but to missing transactions. Could we have on screen, please, FUJ 001 71894? The reference for this peak is PC 0207787. The summary is audit, transaction gap info overwritten in summary worksheet. And the impact statement on the 18th of January 2011 says the problem will only occur in exceptional circumstances but should be fixed in case the exceptional circumstance happens. If it does occur, transaction gap information is overwritten in the results spreadsheet and we would not be able to send the ARQ to poll. We would probably attempt to resolve the cause of the gaps or duplicates before sending the output to poll in any case, but the problem really ought to be fixed. Recognising that this is not a peak log into which you made entries, but one you commented on in your statement, is this problem a distinct one from the duplicates problem we've been looking at? Or part of the same problem?
No, this appears to be about gaps. So you've got duplicates and you've got gaps. So all the messages written have a message number, and you can have a duplicate, but also very rarely, and it is very, very rare actually, you can have a gap, i.e. no message at all. This is referring to gaps, which duplicates are quite common, particularly for, duplicates were quite common for Horizon, but not for H and GX really, I don't think. Gaps weren't common for anything, but you've got to be checked for them. And this seems to be saying that there was some problem with reporting gaps.
Going please to page 4 of the document. There's an entry of the 20th of June 2011 there. Peak has been test installed in integration, routing back to source. And then there are 3 entries on the 30th of June 2011, one from Mark Ascott saying successfully tested by LST, and one final one closing the peak. Can you help with whether there was a further fix in relation to this issue, in addition to the fix implemented for duplicate transactions, or is this part of the same thing?
I think this, I assume this is a separate issue. I assume this is a separate one.
In your first statement, you addressed a number of other peaks which you consider may have had an impact on the audit log. I don't propose to take you to all of those, but one of these relates to an issue arising in April 2013. Could we have on screen, please, FUJ 00226-106? About 2/3 of the way down the page is an email from you to CSPOA Security. Can you just explain, please, which team that was?
That's cyber security post office account, which is the same as the. It's what I sometimes call the prosecution team. Sometimes it's. I suppose it's not. I suppose it's part of the same thing. Yes, it's the same penny, etc. At the time.
And it is copied to Rajbinder Baines and Andy Dunks, among others. It is dated the 15th of April. Apologies if we can go down, please. That email below, the 15th of April email from you. The subject line is possibility of missing transactions. And you say, hi, a serious flaw has recently been spotted in the audit code. It was introduced in the fixed PC 0187097 quite some time ago, but post HNGX. There is a small possibility of missing transactions on generated spreadsheets if the query handling was run during the evening query manager shutdown. Please raise a priority peak on the issue and send it to audit dev. Mr. Dunks replied to you the next day, a bit further up the page, please, saying this, Gerald, can you confirm that we're talking about as far back as September 2009? Are you able to pop down and explain and show us what we're to look for, as we will need to put together some timescales to complete this task? And then above, you reply and say, I'll come down in a few minutes. Just to be clear, the issue you were flagging appears to have the potential to lead to transactions missing from audit data provided to the post office by Fujitsu. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. Though in fact, it would be quite likely, it might be noticed by our gap checks, because if something was getting missed, unless it was at the very beginning, at the very end of the range, it would be noticed by the gap check. But yes, potentially.
And was Andy Dunks right in when he was asking if this could go back as far as September 2009? Do you know how far it could have gone back?
Well, not offhand. You'd need to look at the peak when this peak I cross-referred to got fixed, I suppose. But well, if you said that, I suppose possibly. I don't. Without going into detail, I couldn't say.
Could we have on screen, please, FUJ 001 73057? This is peak reference PC 0225071. The summary is possibility of missing transactions on ARQ audit spreadsheets. And the impact statement dated the 12th of June 2018 is entered by you. It says this: there is a loophole in the code of query DLL, whereby if it is running during the evening service shutdown, the resulting prosecution spreadsheets produced later may have missing transactions. There is a tiny possibility that errors in the query manager service may not be reported, meaning that invalid prosecution spreadsheets may be produced. There is a possibility of errors being generated when audit queries are being run and the query manager service is shut down and restarted. This wastes the time of the prosecution service and makes them rerun queries. This makes achieving SLAs more difficult. You appear from the log entries in this peak to have been involved in investigating and finding a fix to this problem. Looking on page 2, please, to an entry of the 16th of April 2013. There is a reference, going back up, please. It's a reference to a meeting held the day before with Adam Spurgeon, Alan Holmes, and Steve Goddard. Can you help with which teams these individuals were in?
Alan Holmes was the manager of the audit team at the time. Not the manager, was the designer for the audit team at the time. Steve Goddard and Adam Spurgeon were managers.
Scrolling, if you can't assist any further.
I thought I'd answered the question.
I'm sorry, I thought you were continuing.
No, that was it. Yeah. So there was. Alan Holmes was the designer, and the other two were managers.
Scrolling.
Before we get into this document, can I tell you that Miss Price, that I can't go on beyond 4:30 today. So since we're getting reasonably close there, I think we better take stock about what's happening.
Yes, sir. The witness is available to attend tomorrow morning to finish his evidence, should that be necessary. I was going to stop after this topic to see, sir, whether you wanted to sit a little later or to continue tomorrow.
Well, I think we're going to have to continue tomorrow by the sound of it. So just choose a suitable moment between now and 4:30 to round off then, all right?
Yes, sir. Scrolling down, please, to the last box on this page, the 16th of April 2013 entry. You say that the affected platform was the audit server, and the technical summary was a loophole has been found in query DLL.dll, whereby if it is running during the evening shutdown of the query manager's service, the prosecution spreadsheets produced later may have missing transactions. In addition, the design ethos at the moment of query DLL is that on shutdown, a failure state is indicated. This is to be changed to there being a rerun of the query after shutdown, which would have prevented this problem in the first place, although there would still have been a problem if a genuine error rather than a shutdown had occurred prior to the faulty code, which masked the earlier state. As well as that, and a precaution, the error handling of query DLL.dll is going to be looked at and improved. The impact on user is dealt with a little further down, going over to the top of the next page. The prosecution spreadsheets will be more reliable after this fix. There is then an entry towards the bottom of this page on the 24th of May 2013, made by you. And in this, you deal with completion of initial testing using a debug version and attach your test plan. You say, unfortunately, 7.22 has been superseded by an 8.01 release, and so the fix will need merging. There has been debate about exactly where this shall be released. Whilst investigating the original problem, the following problems are fixed in query DLL.dll. The original major problem that transactions would go missing silently from spreadsheets if an evening query manager shutdown occurred at a particular point, and you go on to explain the other aspects of that. Over the page, we see the fourth entry down, dated the 12th of June 2013, is made by you. Andy Dunks has stated that he is prepared to only run audit queries in the day to prevent the possibility of audit transactions being missed from spreadsheets due to a bug in the code that handles the overnight shutdown of the query manager service. I'm therefore proposing this peak for the 9.28 maintenance release. This is 2 months after the issue first arose. Was this the first point at which the process for running audit queries was modified to avoid the risk of spreadsheets being affected after the issue was raised in April 2013?
I suppose so, yes, so that's right. Though Andy had checked all, so you could tell whether there had been an evening shutdown by looking in the query manager log, and Andy had checked them all, I believe, and so we'd taken checks to make sure everything was okay, as I understand it, but that's right, yes.
As far as you can see from this log, and as far as you are aware, was Post Office told about this issue, either by this point or before the fix in November 2014?
I don't know the answer to that, I'm afraid. I don't know that.
The last entry on this page is dated the 12th of June 2013 and is made by you. And your technical summary is, a thorough review of the query manager service has been conducted. One major bug has been found which could result in prosecution spreadsheets having missed transactions if the query manager service is shut down and restarted. In addition, many less serious issues have been found with the query manager service. There is a tiny possibility that if an error occurs, it will not be reported. The evening shutdown can cause queries to fail that would otherwise have worked. These issues are all fixed. Is it right that your finding reported here, albeit you say these issues are now all fixed, was that an error could have occurred and not have been reported?
That's what it says, so it must be the case. Yes, that's what it's saying.
This is the same concern you had expressed in 2007, was it not, around error handling, that the code should be written in a way that prevents silent failures?
That's right, exactly. But I thought the query handler, as I said, I didn't write it all myself. It was something that had been written by a team. I thought it was much better error handling than what I saw at EPOS. Though, as with all things, you can always have little gaps, little mistakes. But I thought in general it was better. It had obviously been designed to trap errors from the word go, this service. And they made missed little points. But it had basically been designed to trap errors from the word go.
going over the page, please, about a third of the way down, you address the risks of not delivering the fix. I think scrolling up, perhaps. Risks of releasing and not releasing proposed fix. If this fix is not delivered, there is the possibility that incorrect prosecution spreadsheets will be produced. If this fix is not delivered, some prosecution spreadsheet production runs will fail if the evening shutdown occurs in the middle of them. Did you recognise at the time how significant a problem this might be?
Yes, well, that's right. Yes, well, yeah, definitely. That's why we took we did a lot of checks. That's right.
Did you recognise the risk that incorrect data might be presented in support of post office prosecutions?
Absolutely. But as I say, a lot of steps were taken to check this hadn't happened.
In any of your conversations with Andy Dunks, do you recall him talking about the significance of the problem and the risk that incorrect data might be presented in support of post office prosecutions?
Well, he just agreed that he was going to run the checks that were suggested to him to make sure that his spreadsheets hadn't been produced in the evening shutdown. Because you can always tell from looking at the query handler log whether this had happened or not.
Do you recall being told about any discussion of this issue with the post office?
No, I never. That never. That never. No, I didn't. Conversations about the post office never really directly got to me, I don't think.
This was an issue which had first come up in June 2013. Can you assist with why it took until November 2014, the date you give in your statement, for the issue being fixed, for that to happen?
Which statement? Which section of the statement?
Looking at your first statement.
I think I do recall it.
It's paragraph 38B, and it's about 6 lines from the bottom.
Thank you, sir. We can
November
look.
2014. Oh, right.
We can look, if it helps, to the last entry in this peak. Just going to the last page.
December 2000. Well, okay, so that it's finally closed in December 2014. But we've got but just a second. 19th of November 2014. It's got software fix available to call longer.
And if it assists, scrolling up a little, the entries immediately above.
Yeah, so it looks like it's been released. Well, the fix was released in November 2014. It's just that Jason's closed the peak in December 2014. So I think my statement is actually correct. Yes, my statement says it subsequently deployed in around November 2014, which is what the statement by Lorraine Giblin means. 19th of November 2014.
And so
software fix available to call on.
Looking back to that original date that the issue was raised, I misspoke earlier, it was the 16th of April 2013. Can you help with why it took until November 2014 for a fix?
Oh, right, I'm not sure, I can't remember now. Don't know why it took so long, it seems quite a long time, certainly.
Right, we'll have to take that up further tomorrow if necessary.
So that was the last of my questions for today.
I thought it would have been, but I gave you the opportunity to have another go. All right. Well, I'm very sorry, Mr. Barnes, that you'll have to return tomorrow. But I'm grateful to you that you've made yourself available to come tomorrow. Forget about this case tonight if you possibly can. Don't talk about your evidence and come ready for a much shorter session, I hope and suspect, tomorrow morning. Thank you.
Thank you.